what do you want to break down here for?
Well, I want to show with 5 minutes and 13 seconds to go in the game, the Packers up 19-7. Morgan Burnett comes down with an interception.
Yes.
All right, remember this, but because we have to show this play here because it's very peculiar what happens. Let's just show you the play here first. All right, here's Morgan Burnett. All right, the ball's going to go to Jermaine Kearse here in the middle. It's going to go off his fingertips. So just keep an eye on Morgan Burnett. He's dropping back to the middle safety right here. The ball is now intercepted by Burnett. Now he's starting to run, but here's Julius Peppers right here. He's telling Morgan Burnett to get down, get down. But I want you to see here, before he gets down, look at all of this space here that Morgan Burnett, if he stays on his feet, this kid is an athlete. Yeah. There's an alley there. I don't know that anybody on Seattle right here is going to stop him from maybe scoring or at least picking up a big chunk piece of yards after that interception. Now, 19-7, maybe you take it back, make it 26-7. Maybe you return it a lot further where you're at least in field goal range, something like that. Julius Peppers tells him to get down. He follows the orders.
Well, and you had the fastest guys from the Seahawks behind him. Yeah. He had his receivers behind him, right? So Morgan Burnett there with the ball and some linemen in front of him, especially if Julius Peppers goes and makes a block.
Well, the main thing is he falls down outside of field goal range.
Right.
So that was the thing. They couldn't even get a field goal out of that. I mean, Seattle ended up stopping them and forcing a punt, short punt that goes out of bounds and gives Seattle some room.
But there's still 5 minutes and 13 seconds to go. Most guys, they get the ball in their hands. They want to score. Well, put the game on ice.
And here's the thing about that play. It's not just them going up on the scoreboard. It's playing against that team in that stadium. So all of a sudden, he possibly takes it to the house. The crowd is deflated. You're almost taking the 12s out of it. And then the other sideline, the Seahawks are completely dismantled at that point because you're not going to be able to score 3 touchdowns in 4 minutes.
That crowd was out of it when he took that pick, regardless if he sat down on it right now. They thought that was it.
People started leaving the stadium there at that time. But 5 minutes and 13 seconds to go. Burnett's got the ball in his hands, and he's got an alley. And maybe picks up some blockers right there. When Peppers tells him to get down, like that's the play, you know, when you start figuring out how this unraveled in Green Bay. That's one of the plays right there that you have to talk about.
And I'm going to jump subjects for a second. I was listening to Randy Moss, and he said that they talked to Brandon Bostic, and he said, I feel like the whole world is on my shoulders. So I'm going to just talk to Brandon Bostic for a second because I understand exactly where you're at right now. I've made my fair share of mistakes on the field, but this too shall pass. There was a lot of plays in the game. It's not on your shoulders, young fella. So try to get over it. I get it. You're a competitor, and you feel like you might have lost this game, but you didn't. Just bounce back and have a great year next year.
That was one play, as we showed you, in a sequence of plays that just did not go the Packers' way. And this, as we mentioned, Steve, Aaron Rodgers here, I mean, odds-on favorite to win the MVP based on his regular season performance. Obviously been dealing with the calf injury. You know, got the Packers in scoring position there early on, but, boy, that second half was really difficult for this Packers offense. What did you see from the Packers quarterback?
I saw, well, first off, he was hurt. I talked to some folks on the Packers sideline before the game, and they said the injury was legit. I mean, fragile was one of the adjectives that was put out there. So he gutted through it, but I mean, look, Seattle's defense rose up. Seattle was a different team in the second half. They had 7 first-half penalties, only had 1 in the second half. But defensively, Eddie Lacy could not get going. You saw James Starks get a couple leaky runs. But what Seattle was doing, it was they were turning the ball over. They were not, you barely heard Randall Cobb's name. Even with one arm, Richard Sherman was keeping Jordy Nelson out of play. And they weren't getting much from their tight ends. So all of a sudden you saw the possessions shorten. Instead of these 8 or 9 possessions or these short fields, Green Bay wasn't getting them on the home field. So that was part of the issue right there. Seattle never folded. This was an incredible thing. I probably got on the sidelines with 6 or 7 minutes to go. And with everything that was going against Seattle, all those players could not wait to get back on the field. The defensive players were like, let's go, let's get the ball back to our offense. The offense was like, let's go, let's make a play. And I think that was in part because so many players had made mistakes. They were so uncharacteristic in the first half. They couldn't blame it on anybody but themselves. So if you made a mistake, I'm going to pick you up because I made a mistake that could have also cost us a shot at the Super Bowl.
Well, and as we said, the Packers defense had some plays to make at the end of this game where they make 1 or 2 plays here, and it's a completely different ball game. But they were not making some of those plays with one of their key players not on the field.
And this is something we don't know why, but Clay Matthews was not on the field. I mean, there was even some significant down and distance situations. It was clear Seattle would have to pass. Clay Matthews was on the sidelines, and we haven't heard an explanation if he was hurt, if this was a certain package they were trying to use. But I mean, this is one of the most dominant players in the NFL. This was go time.
Yeah.
And again, there were stretches of this game where he was not on the field. I'm sure if Russell Wilson looks out there and says, "There's Clay Matthews," you know, we've got to figure out what to do here.
You know, watching Clay over these years and then playing against him, I got to give him benefit of the doubt in saying that it was something much deeper than him being fatigued mentally or physically. Just because that's not typical of him, especially in a moment like that.
Competitor in that type of situation.
Seattle only had 22 offensive plays in the first
half.